The Assembly of Bishops is comprised of the 55 canonical Orthodox bishops in the United States of America. That's not only the ones of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America, but many of the other jurisdictions, the Antiochians, the Serbians, the Russians, the Ukrainians, the Georgians, the Bulgarians, and the Orthodox Church in America, OCA. So that's what comprises the Assembly of Bishops, and all of our agencies that you'll learn about today are would be somewhat like departments. There are ministry arms of the Assembly. So please enjoy the testimonial video, and then we'll do some question and answer.
My journey into the church was a very rocky road. It started out me going to jail. When I found myself in jail without family, without friends, without anyone to lean on, I was tired of feeling alone. Coming from where I've come from, one of the struggles that I have is wondering what friends are actually true friends. So I started wanting something else to reach out to. I was getting to a point to where I was about ready to give up on religion altogether because I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't have a good guide. I didn't have any kind of guide. Being a history buff, I thought, well, let me see if I can find the beginnings of some of these religions and see if any of them have something that's the same all the way throughout. I had my mom mail me up the New Testament Orthodox Bible, and in that is a address for OCPM out in California. So I wrote that address. I got a response back from a guy named Father Dwayne. I was starting to get the feeling of caring about their life. And I couldn't explain that. I didn't know where it came from and how it happened. But I was starting to want their approval more than anyone else's approval. I wanted to hear from them more than I wanted to hear from my own family. I didn't know how it was happening. I didn't know why it was happening. Because I didn't feel like I had done anything in this life worthy of that kind of attention. By the time I got out, what it had done was created a love for God and for the Orthodox Church that was beyond measurable, to the point where I was willing to give up everything that this world could offer just for the opportunity to be able to go to church. And that's where I was at when I got out. By the time I got to the church, I had changed so much that I could see the goodness in humanity. I could see the goodness in the world. I could see the goodness in just nature, and I wanted more of it. If my cup was overflowing, I felt like it was empty. However much I had, I did not feel like I had enough. I talked with Father Jeremy. I pretty much broke down in tears in front of him, and I said, I want to be a member of this church. I want to be a member of God's church.
Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. These words were Christ's last command to his disciples and to all the church before he ascended into heaven. And for 2,000 years, men and women have been traveling throughout the world to share the gospel. But today, there are still over 1 billion people who have not heard the message of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And this is the work of the Orthodox Christian Mission Center, to bring people to Christ and to share his love.
400 miles north of Nairobi, at the edge of a vast rugged region called Turkana, Orthodox priest Father Vladimir Paul and Father Zachariah, with the blessings of His Eminence Archbishop Makarios, have been working with the OCMC to bring the Orthodox faith to the people that call this place home.
OCMC is the greatest partner of the Church of Turkana. And the church in Turkana has grown rapidly since the year 2007, when the first OCMC team was sent to Turkana. By then, we had only 2 communities, and we had only 200 Orthodox people. At the moment, we are 10 communities. We have 800 baptized Orthodox.
The Turkana district of northwest Kenya is a large territory, and in recent years has been gripped by a severe drought that has had a profound impact on the lives of the Turkana people.
The life in Turkana is a pastoralist life, going from place to place, looking for pasture and water. It is now 10 years the drought has been severe, has hit the Turkana community. So the animals have died of hunger, and many of them have lost these animals, and they are going into smaller communities that are sprouting within Turkana.
To minister to the physical needs of the Turkana people, OCMC built a much-needed water well deep within the interior to ease the suffering of the people there.
Istani ono pete ku atono puro ba data ma iteni mekidurata no pa ego agelu ri ja ku jara ki ja
e qarro bangolo longo ningolo abuni ayon abuji ke qarlo ko ki yaqar suwa raya risaburo be peki ni konsa apanta suwa nini raya amamro bonga kuro konsa yakasi rai turkan tu kangna ani armori qarna ra turkan kangna e bo yer ba pas ko ngin ara ja ku jidange mitike bu apolo na apolo ni buki yana ike berni ara iteni ata tamara e gerlo bunyo apolo uteli berni ne limuni teli wor ba iteni ngona anu pasi ko anu padir ba ko lo tungalo turkan pa yenete e konisa ane ger ngolo ku patu robo ku patu apa tu apa nete ani anrubo epote ngakro na kopiti patulo tokon loko atamati nyai mon tokon nya raiswa be tokon ali wor ngakro danya e be ya badi tani ngapolosi ya arai dangi akuju isi arai teni kotere apote kolongo ngakro na dangi poto na polosio.
salah kare ta ba oh aja kan be bujira sa do ko to na bolu angara ngai ta ku jaw sa do ni tinaka habe na lum nyaayo naka nya jo ko ne bujir ka ngon ja jo ko.
There is no greater gift that we as Orthodox Christians have to offer than this hope of eternal life in Jesus Christ. Your life and the lives of others can be transformed by the Holy Spirit by embarking on this journey of faith.
Hello, everybody. My name is Evan Rusi.
Hi there, I'm Ella Powers.
My name is Eliza Quarter.
My name is Lucy Tobias.
Hello, everybody. My name is Noah Muller.
My name is Paige Sarkaria.
And I will be joining the Orthodox Volunteer Corps this fall as part of the 2022 and 2023 cohort.
I'm really excited to be part of OVC this upcoming year.
I'm very excited to be part of the inaugural year of OVC.
I'm so excited to be a part of OVC this fall. I grew up here in Montana as a priest kid, and I learned from an early age how important and amazing it is to engage in your community and learn from them and serve them in any way. So I'm excited to be doing more of that in Pittsburgh and getting to know a new community.
One of the things I'm most excited about for sure is living in fellowship with the other Corps members. I think it's going to be really awesome to live, eat, work, and pray together all in the same house.
I think some of the things that I'm most excited about are probably all of the people that I'm going to meet, whether it's my fellow OVC Corps members.
I'm really excited to meet all the other participants.
In the fall, we're all going to be living one life, even if we work at different places, and I cannot wait to experience that.
I just actually got chrismated into the Orthodox Church. I was a catechumen up until this past Pascha. And this time last year, I barely even knew what Orthodoxy was. So I've had like a huge change in my life coming into the faith. And one of the things I feel like I really want to see more is people living out the faith in their daily life, and seeing how other Orthodox Christians, especially those my age, how they go about living the faith in their daily life. I know I'm going to learn so much from their example, and I'm really excited to be a part of that. So I really appreciate this opportunity.
I'm really excited to just be able to put my abilities into practice and to serve and learn from a community in Pittsburgh.
I just got my business degree from Montana State University here in Bozeman, so I'm hoping to be able to utilize those skills in OVC as well.
I've kind of wanted to do this sort of work for a really long time, and there wasn't a good Orthodox organization kind of to support this kind of thing. I realized just from personal experience what a giant difference it makes to people if you feed them when they're hungry, if you take care of them even if they're a stranger, that kind of thing. And so ever since then, I've kind of really wanted to put that into action. OVC is a great opportunity to do that. So I'm very excited to get that hands-on experience filtered through an Orthodox lens.
Just one other thing that's kind of interesting about me, I guess, or unique, is I really enjoy learning languages. And I know in Orthodoxy is a lot of times, especially during Pascha, there's a lot of new languages coming around. So I hope to learn a little more about the Greek language as well. Maybe some Syrian and Russian in there too.
I don't speak a lot of languages, but I really kind of like digging into their mechanics, and I have a sprinkling of a lot of them. My degree has a minor in Spanish, so I have a minor in Spanish. And I've taken a little bit of Arabic, a little bit of French. I'm about to be in Italy, so I'm going to learn a little bit of Italian for that.
One fun fact about me is that I really love backpacking and hiking.
I love spending time outdoors. You can pretty much always find me going on a walk or run, going on a bike ride or a hike. I just love spending time outside in the sun, in nature, and with friends.
I spent my life exclusively doing things outside here in Montana, so I'm hoping we can all do some of that together in Pennsylvania as well.
I spent 8 years from age 10 to age 18 in the Boy Scouts of America. We put a lot of emphasis on being prepared and on having an adventure and finding the perfect harmony between both of those things. And here in the Orthodox Volunteer Corps, I think we're going to also put a lot of emphasis on being prepared. And this time our adventure is serving the Lord our God and loving our neighbor as ourselves.
In summary, I'm super excited.
I'm really excited.
I'm really excited to get to know everybody.
I'm really excited.
I cannot wait to get started.
I'm just so grateful for this opportunity.
And I can't wait for September 1st when this program starts.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. I'm incredibly honored to represent Orthodox Christian Fellowship, and it feels surreal, but just so full circle. In my first year at Lehigh University, I don't even remember how many times I opened my mouth to speak, if at all, and yet somehow I graduated president of Lehigh Valley OCF chapter. By the grace of God, I attended 2 college conferences, multiple online gatherings, a retreat, and probably even more if it weren't for a global pandemic. I remember after service with the Cardiotisa weeping icon on the first night of my first college conference. I was praying to the Mother of God alone in my room. I hadn't had a single conversation with anyone other than the 3 people I came with. I felt so defeated and desperate for change. I felt like I was letting sand fall through my hands, and I was just too consumed by thoughts of how I might be annoying to someone to even start to speak to them. I mark clearly and distinctly that night as the beginning of my journey to opening my heart. Slowly, I began to pay more and more attention to the actions around me rather than the concerns in my head. I tried to leave behind the idea that there has to be a church Melina and leaned into the excitement that more or less everyone was here for the same few reasons. The more events I attended, the new faces in my chapter, or just situations that felt like I was taking too big of a step, the Orthodox world began to feel smaller, and in the best way. I left my last college conference with so many lasting and intertwining connections that unexpectedly deepened my connection to the parish I had quietly been a part of for years. So much so that I felt like I've been adopted by half the families at my church. People who have fed me, housed me, been there for me without question, didn't even know I existed my first 2 years of undergrad. If you were to ask any of my friends, my peers who have truly seen me grow in the past few years, they would attest to such a pertinent change, not in who I am as a person, but the way in which I am. Leading my chapter was equally as humbling as it was fortifying, as I was surrounded by such knowledgeable, kind-hearted spirits in a position that forced me to consider the fact that sometimes it's okay or even necessary to be the center of attention. Silence is inarguably one of our greatest tools for learning about others and ourselves. And yet, I have felt these moments of ineffable vicinity to Christ, speaking just to speak to individuals of the same faith. I think about our OCF Thanksgiving dinner, our OCF virtual Christmas scavenger hunt, Zoom calls from across the world in the midst of chaos, and yet completely at home. Even as plainly as, "What did you have for dinner tonight? Beans again?" My 18-year-old self would have never fathomed leading a discussion, let alone speaking for a national convention. With the tug of war college students inevitably face keeping the church in the center of their hearts, being able to walk into an Orthodox church, usually countless miles from home, unlocks a universal feeling of coming home. Stepping into a narthex, being surrounded by the smell of incense and the familiar sounds of chanting, can dissolve any border, worldly stresses, or studies. Simply, my heart exhales. The amount of tears, prayers, cycling through falling and repenting has continually granted me a life I never knew I would get to have, or needed so deeply in my heart. I'm constantly proving my own doubts wrong by the ever-climbing brink of my capabilities through Christ. And not to mention, constantly amazed by the seemingly infinite patience of my spiritual father through the intercessions of the Theotokos, St. Paisios of Athos, St. Xenia of St. Petersburg, St. Gerasimos of Kefalonia, just to name a few. I've been guided so ardently without fail that each time I think I know where things are headed in my life, I have been presented with the opportunity to do so much more. And especially the past few months, I have been purely overwhelmed by the presence of God in my life. And for this, the new beginnings paved, the new friends placed in my life, I cannot be thankful enough. I've learned there is simply no work that goes unaccounted for, whether it is in His grace to reveal it to us or not. OCF has paved my way for an irreplaceable sense of community, a space to relearn trust and joy. It is priceless and timeless to find sight of your value as a vessel of Christ. There are so many gifts I've been granted that I can only pray to know what to do with them all. I can only pray that the delivery of my work be pleasing to Him who gave them to me. I pray that the Lord blesses each one of you, both in your trials and in your moments of peace, but above all, to continue to seek and foster the undeniable light of Christ in our neighbors and ourselves. Glory is forever in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
My recent conversion to Orthodoxy prompted me to finally seek help for sex addiction, a battle I had fought in secrecy for years. While I had bravely taken an important step to recovery, I was unprepared for what lay ahead. The first therapist I met, a non-Christian, told me my celibate lifestyle, I am single, was unnatural and the result of long-carried guilt and shame. I was even encouraged to have healthy premarital encounters. This did more than make me feel hurt and misunderstood. It reinforced a broken, underlying belief that no one, therapists included, cares. In a desperate late-night online search, I discovered the directory of Orthodox Christian mental health professionals. By God's grace, I have found a therapist who is indeed caring and able to offer the sensitivity and support I need on my journey to sobriety.
Christ is in our midst. He is and always shall be. As Orthodox Christians, we are challenged to be good Samaritans. And how do we do that? Well, I'm able to share with you that I was certified in mental health first aid, and it's a program being made available through the Assembly of Canonical Orthodox Bishops for all of us, wrapped around an Orthodox program called Peace of Mind. Each and every one of our clergymen, our youth workers, in fact, all individuals should be certified in mental health first aid and the Peace of Mind program. God bless you all. I couldn't be more pleased.
While we still have a long way to go in breaking the stigma, I think this generation has more understanding and empathy for mental health struggles than any generation before it. Our church is now a part of this understanding, which has been made possible through the Peace of Mind Facilitator program created by the Mental Health Task Force. This is groundbreaking work. It's never been done before. The Peace of Mind vision is that an essential component in our ongoing work of cultivating a culture of mental wellness within our community, while also recognizing the fullness of health through the context of Christ and the Orthodox Church. I went through the facilitator training, and the experience far exceeded my expectations. Through the Mental Health First Aid program and the Orthodox Bridging, it's clear that we can start to bridge the gap between what seem to be two different worlds, when in reality they are very much rooted in Christ. Peace of Mind aims to enhance the ministry of clergy and ministry leaders with the tools to identify, understand, and respond to mental health crisis, cultivate ongoing conversations about mental wellness within the parish and the greater pan-Orthodox Christian community. Mental health has not always been an area that Christian community has understood or even acknowledged. In fact, there's still some people who would see mental health as a secular invention. As a Peace of Mind facilitator, my hope is that we change that.
As the panelists make their way to the stage, I will just introduce them. We have Dean Triandafilou from IOCC. We have Father Martin Ritzy from OCMC. We have Deacon Merrick from OCF. We have Nico Petrogeorge from OCPM. We have Kira Limbarakis from OVC. And we have Christian Gonzalez from the Orthodox Youth Ministries, OYM. So welcome to the stage. And my name is Nicholas Antom. I'm the Director of Operations for the Assembly of Canonical Orthodox Bishops of the United States of America. And we wanted to host this panel today to feature all of our great ministries. We'll start with you, Dean, with IOCC. So this is your platform to communicate on behalf of those who cannot be here today, those who IOCC serves. If they were here in this room in front of this captive audience, what would they say?
Thanks, Nick. Big question. Really big question. I think, not that I can speak on their behalf, but obviously the first thing they would say would be thank you. And knowing them as well as I do from the travels, I think the second thing they would say would be to welcome all of you into their homes and into their lives, because I think as much as we give to them, they give to us. Second thing I would hope they would say would be that IOCC's programs responded to their needs and that they were always treated with dignity and respect.
Thank you. Father Martin, we heard Father Macarios talk about how OCMC supports the local clergy, parishes, seminaries, and communities financially. Then we heard Rebecca tell us in a general way about the various programs and projects that have helped for basic survival. Can you expand on OCMC's on-the-ground programs and projects mentioned by Rebecca?
Thank you, Nick. First off, I want to thank Nick for pulling this all together in a creative and different way, rather than just having presentations and talks. That was beautiful to see the idea of the video and the personal stories and this kind of a panel here. So thank you for bringing us a creative approach to be together. Now, in answer to your question, I'll just say a couple things. Other things we're doing on the ground when you saw Rebecca there in Turkana, which we just came back from. First off, one of the main things we're doing, and the thing that brings us so much excitement, is bringing people to Christ. Rebecca's one of those examples, who's somebody who hadn't heard about Jesus all of her life until she came to the church. And she tells stories in our other videos about how her life was absolutely transformed when she became Christian. But in addition to that, there's another dimension of OCMC. It's not just the bringing people to Christ, but as you read in the Gospel of St. James, somebody's naked or hungry, and you say to them, be filled, be blessed, God bless you, and you don't do anything about it. What good is that? Right? That's empty. Faith without works is dead. And so we are challenged also to help the people that we work with, and we do that in numerous ways. Remember in Turkana, the first time I visited this area, people were walking a day to go and get water, and they rationed water. They'd go 2, maybe 3 times a week, and what they would carry home was everything that they would drink. And so we saw 7 times we went there, people asked us to pray, and he filled rivers with miracles, and people got baptized. But then we also raised money in order to build wells. If God can bring the miracle of water, we can use the miracle of our blessings to bring water too. We talked to people out there in these villages, didn't know the world is round. They hadn't heard that theory. And that's another area of concern, schools and education. We've built schools and we send people to teach. And then there's also the other area, I think, which I'll just mention this one. There's so many ways, but the most important one that I see is that we work on the ground. It's the fourth area of how we help. The first is we help as a national church to them. The next is their national church helps them. The third is the parish helps them. But the fourth and the most exciting thing that happens is when the people help each other. And Rebecca also tells that story about how before she became Christian, she lived in a village, and we were all strangers to each other. But when I became Christian, everybody became my neighbor, and we started helping each other. And that's the powerful projects that are happening on the ground.
Thank you, Father. Deacon Merrick, we heard how Melina, like so many other college students, can feel alone on campus. And we heard how she found her community through OCF. Can you tell us about how many communities you serve, how many campuses you are on, and do you have plans to expand? And if you do, can you tell us a little bit more about those plans?
Yes. Good morning. Well, first off, to answer your first question, currently OCF has a presence on about 200 college campuses, some in different ways, some to different extent, and also impacting different number of students. When I'm relatively new with OCF, I got my feet wet, and then we started a pandemic, and as we come out of it... You
started the pandemic.
Oh, no. We have a new vision. To put it simple, it's going to be a new day for OCF. We have a new vision. We have new leadership. We have a new staff. And what we've seen is that to really have a a ministry which can expand in a substantial way, we've got to start at the ground level and build our campus presence. Early on, literally a month before the pandemic started, I visited the University of Georgia, and some of you probably know Father Anthony Salzman. He took me around campus, and the most striking thing for me was we went down what he called Ministry Row. And there was this Catholic, I think it was Roman Catholic house that was like a student center. And there was a flag football game and probably 40 students hanging out on a nice spring day in Georgia. And right next to that was a Protestant student center. And there was a barbecue, and they had a tent set up, and there was, 30, 40 students there. And then it was one after another, Hillel, the Jewish campus ministry. And I looked at him and I said, that's what I want for OCF. We need to provide a place where students can have rich fellowship with one another, where they can be invited to maintain their faith, their values and identity. We need to be the loving presence of Christ on campus. And to do that, we need to start placing staff on campus. We need to train and equip people to be on campus and serve the students, to really invest in their lives, not just to meet with them once a week for an hour for a Bible study, but to invite them into women's groups and to sit and have coffee with students as they discern their vocation and mentor them as they go through their college years. They're asking life's big questions during college, and we need to be there for them in a substantial way. So thank God we're going to pilot a location next year. And we're going to grow that, and eventually we're going to be on 5 and 10 and 20 and 100. God knows how many campuses where we can really make a difference and invest in their lives in a way that they can be with one another in fellowship, but also stay connected to their communities, to their faith, to build bridges with parishes. And that's my vision for expansion, a little wordy, but thank you for asking.
Thank you, Deacon Merrick. Nico, why would you say prison ministry is important for the church, and what's unique about OCPM's approach to prison ministry?
Yeah, good morning. Well, with regard to prison ministry, the obvious thing is it's biblical, right? Matthew 25:36, Christ tells us very directly, this is one of the things we'll be judged on, is did we visit those who are in prison, right? But beyond that, it's something that's maybe more present than we realize. There's about 2 million people in the United States right now who are living their lives behind bars. Much like addiction, this is not a distant issue. I would venture to say that I'm almost certain there is somebody in this room right now who has served time in prison or has had an immediate family member who is in prison right now. And that translates to all of our parishes as well. I think most of our priests in here may know kind of a lot of times in secret, that there's somebody in the parish who has been in prison. This is not a faraway issue. It's important that our church addresses it because there is trauma around it, and that we talk about it, that there's awareness around it, that we know that our church believes in second chances. Why? Because Christ gives us infinite chances. So therefore, we pass that on to those who have served in prison and also their family members who are oftentimes in our pews suffering with shame and quiet. So it's important that we talk about this. It's important that our church has a presence in this to extend our hands into the prison and to say, the Lord will offer a second chance. In terms of our approach, in some ways it's similar to the philosophy behind what Deacon Merrick is talking about. Our ministry starts with relationship. One of the first times I talked to our founder, Father Dwayne Peterson, he told me that when he started out in prison ministry, his goal was to really reach out and specifically minister to those who were serving life in prison or who were on death row, because he felt like those were the people who had nobody who was waiting for them. They were the ones who were really isolated. And Father Dwayne said, I'll be that person. I'll be the one who will write to you year after year after year. I will be the one who will visit you. I will have that long-term relationship with you. And that's very different than a lot of other prison ministries. You know, our Protestant brothers and sisters, a lot of times the ministry that they give is around, you know, a weekend event, and it's kind of, okay, I'm saved, check mark, see you never again. Our theology informs us to have a different approach, which is to maintain long-term relationships. And we do this by having case managers who establish relationships with prisoners and maintain them for years at a time, and help integrate people back into the parish when they're released, and create a unique action plan for how people are going to be brought into the church, for how they're going to maintain their relationship with the church while they're in prison, and even if they're going to do life in prison, how can I still live a meaningful life knowing I'm going to die in prison? Well, there are people that do that. They have prayer lives that put us to shame. They're in there evangelizing other prisoners, bringing them into the faith in prison. Wow, how amazing is that? And so we leverage, we're very, at any given time, we have about 1,000 open case files that we have case workers who are working with those who are in prison. Our ministry has brought over 700 people into the faith in prison alone, not to mention those who have become Orthodox, like Johnny, who you saw in the video, was actually baptized after he got out. And so, you know, for these reasons, yes, prison ministry, it's not something we necessarily always think about, but it's very, very important. It's very important to the lifeblood of our communities, even on the parish level.
Thank you, Nico. Kira and Christian, the next question is the same for both of you. These first four agencies, I think a lot of people know about and have probably heard about at other events. But I think everyone's kind of wondering, where did you come from? You guys are the two newest ministries just created this past October. So tell us a little bit about where you guys came from.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Kira Limbarakis with Orthodox Volunteer Corps. So OVC started in 2019 when a gathering of Orthodox leaders from across the country were talking about the crisis of homelessness and what could the Orthodox Church do to better respond to this crisis. And a lot of us at this gathering said, well, let's think long term. What if we helped develop young adults and members of our community to be the types of Christians who really care about issues of homelessness and hunger and poverty, but not only care for it in their heart, but have had direct experience working with these communities in the United States. And for those of you who aren't aware, there are a lot of programs like Orthodox Volunteer Corps in other Christian traditions and in secular spaces. So you might be familiar with programs like the Peace Corps or AmeriCorps, the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, the Lutheran Volunteer Corps, the Quaker Service Corps. They exist in so many different spaces, and they hadn't existed in the Orthodox Church. And so in 2019 at this gathering, a lot of us were saying, we need a young adult volunteer corps. There are so few formative opportunities for Orthodox young adults ages 21 to 29. Besides a weekend conference or a retreat, we're missing deeply formative opportunities and investment in young adults in a period in their lives when they're making big decisions about relationships and career and their engagement in the church. We also saw at that gathering and realized that young adults are hungry to serve. They see a lot of the crises that are going on in our world today, and they have this desire to respond. They want to see these issues being addressed. And so in 2019, the Assembly of Bishops said, okay, Orthodox Volunteer Corps, we like this idea. Run with it, see where it can go. So representatives from OCMC, Crossroad, where I was working at the time, Project Mexico, St. Basil Academy, the Neighborhood Resilience Project. We spent 2 years volunteering to develop a plan. We met with leaders of these other volunteer corps to say what worked, what didn't work, what would you do differently if you could start this volunteer corps? And so we just hit the ground running. We formed a board, applied for nonprofit status, all with the blessing of the Assembly of Bishops, eventually became an official agency. And we've just finished our first official year of recruitment and program development. So the young adults that you saw in that video who were all saying, I'm so excited, those are 6 Orthodox young adults from across the country who are committing 10 months of their life to do service in the community of Pittsburgh. So we're launching this fall in September. Our young adults will be working at various nonprofits. We're partnering with a homeless shelter. We're partnering with an after-school program for youth who've experienced trauma in the home. We're working with another nonprofit called the Neighborhood Resilience Project, which is also an Orthodox nonprofit. So these young adults are really just, they're at the heart of what we're trying to do here at OVC. And we are investing 10 months in them where they will live in community together. So, you know, a very similar model to kind of, but for young adults, like what Deacon Merrick is saying, but they'll actually get the experience working with these more vulnerable populations. And then throughout the entire experience, we're going to give them the opportunity to dig into what their faith has to say about service and feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, visiting those in prison. So this whole thing started in a collaborative spirit with other organizations, and we hope to continue that in our first year, which is starting this September with our first group of 6 young adults who will be moving to Pittsburgh.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Christian Gonzalez, and I'm with Orthodox Youth Ministries. And I know with a name like that, you're probably wondering what we do. Probably doesn't come to mind right at the top of mind. Anyway, everyone loves a good origin story, and mine began on a class field trip when I was bitten by a radioactive spider. Man, it's still early, huh? Still early. But this is a great question, I think, especially in terms of why would the Assembly of Bishops want to create something like a pan-Orthodox youth ministry agency, especially because jurisdictions tend to have, you know, different youth ministry people that are leading things. But the executive committee of the Assembly of Bishops saw that there really is this pressing need, that there's an issue with youth and young adults, that 60 to 90% of young adults by the time, you know, they graduate college have left the church, and that. And I'm sure those of you who are wearing the collar and that are in your parishes, you're seeing the same kind of numbers, and it's pretty staggering. So it really is a problem. And so the idea emerged to create this agency that would exist to gather the talent and the resources, to unify curricula, to unify processes, and to actually offer trainings and resources and retreats and things for parishes, for priests, for youth workers, for parents. Because this really is quite an issue. And this idea really culminated in 2021 when the Assembly of Bishops declared 2021 to be the year of the youth. And they wanted to devote all of their energy and their time and attention to answering this big question, and that I'm sure a lot of you are asking. It's a question that keeps a lot of us up at night. Why are all of our kids leaving the church? And the crowning achievement of that year of youth was when the Assembly of Bishops, and I hope you understand how wild this is, unanimously approved the creation of this pan-Orthodox youth agency, Orthodox Youth Ministries. So it's pretty wild that we're existing here to come alongside of all of the different jurisdictions, the different parishes, the different priests, the youth workers. I mean, we are here because we want to support all of the endeavors that you are doing in your work. And honestly, and so I myself am, you know, I just recently started this job on July 1st, and until then, I was an employee of the GOA. So here I am, kind of sitting here, I guess, with all of these fine people, as the product of many years working alongside of you all already. And I'm excited to be able to come along and not only offer content and other things for youth and young adults, but to support you, the priests, the youth workers, the parents. So it's not just an agency that exists to do all of the stuff with youth and young adult themselves, but really to minister to the ministers of the youth and young adults. So that's why the Assembly decided that we needed to exist. We're here to support you, and I'm really looking forward to everything that we can do together.
Thank you, Kira and Christian. I just want to reiterate what they said. I'm sure you all have parish councils and know how difficult it is to sometimes make decisions about things like festivals and other things, but imagine 55 bishops having to come unanimously to a decision. So it's pretty much a miracle that we created 2 new agencies recently. Dean, earlier you spoke from the perspective of those you serve on the ground. Now, I'd like to ask you, what is one moment, one story where you knew that IOCC was offering a critical service or care, and with that care, the person being served was set on a new trajectory? In other words, what was an impactful moment in your own ministry that showed you were doing God's work?
So last week, I was in Kosovo, where we've been working now for probably over 25 years. And when on the plane, I was reading the questions, I realized, connecting the dots, I was sitting on a farm in a remote village with a family that we had actually helped return from the conflict in '99. They returned home in 2004. The dad went first. He had the courage to go back. And we set him up with a greenhouse and some livestock feed. And ultimately, we've been using that greenhouse model in other countries. We've taken it to Georgia and elsewhere. So last week, we're sitting in his house. You know, it's a farmhouse. And when he moved back, he had 2 kids. Now he's got 4. And my Serbian's okay. It's not great. I can get by if I have to. But next thing you know, the 4 kids are all grown up. They're speaking, half of them are speaking American English, half are speaking British English. So we had a big conversation about that. But I realized when I was sitting there, they were super engaged. They're talking about politics. One of them's in his 3rd year to study to be a priest. The daughter's studying agriculture. She's going to go back and teach her dad new tricks as far as the farm. We'll see how successful she is. Her dad's pretty old school, grew up on the farm, right? The 3rd kid is going to be studying to be a journalist, which was fascinating to see. So it really hit me on the ride home, and thanks to Nick's question, realizing, you know, how much you can impact people's lives with simple things. You know, here we were was helping this guy get his life back together on the farm, and 20 years later, he's got this beautiful, vibrant family in continues to be a very challenging place.
Thank you, Dean. Father Martin, you spoke about a lot of the projects in Africa, but that's not the only place OCMC is working. What other projects is OCMC implementing around the world?
So I spoke about the angles of OCMC. We're talking about evangelism and talking about sharing the love of Christ. There's another 3rd dimension that we also work in that relates to this question, and that is establishing the church. You know, us Orthodox, we got it tough when it comes to missions. There's some people, when their approach to missions is, we go out to some region and we talk about some spiritual laws, and then we get somebody to say, yes, I accept that. We lay our hands on them, maybe we baptize them, and it's done. Our work is completed, we tick them off, we saved another soul. You know, as Orthodox, we need churches, we need bishops, we need priests. We need music that's translated, all of our music to be translated. And then we need icons. And then we need incense. And you go through all the things to be a full Orthodox church. And you imagine a country that's never had all these things trying to establish that. Well, that's the work that we're doing when we establish Orthodoxy in these different places around the world. So there's the whole spectrum, but I'll mention just a couple of the exciting, bigger ones that are going on. First is the seminary education. So we have a lot of projects going on there, either building seminaries or sponsoring seminaries to train clergy and to raise up bishops around the world. Then another one after that is translations. We strongly believe, and this is our modality as Orthodox, that people need to pray in the same language they dream in. That's what they want to do. And we stand by that. I was in Fiji a few weeks ago where we're establishing a new mission, and the priest turned to me and he said, you know, Father, Fijian isn't a good language to pray in. Oh, I'm like, wow. No. So it was Pentecost, and we were there for Pentecost, and we preached how Jesus came down, and he didn't make everybody understand the same language. He made everybody understand in their own language the words that were being spoken, because all the languages are being blessed. So we have a big effort. We've got 4 people now working, and somebody from Official Bible Translators, Michael Colburn, who helped to create a language a written language for people in Papua New Guinea so that they could have the Bible in their own language. He wrote the software that's running the Ages programs that we read now while he was under OCMC, and now he's written software to help with our translations. We have a team of translators, and we're working to help churches translate in their own languages. And then, well, we only have a couple minutes. There's so much to talk about. I'll stop with that. But just imagine, you know, the work that we have. We're establishing the church, and we've got this whole gamut of things that we're doing. And it's really exciting, but it's also a little bit something that intimidates us because we've got so much to do.
It's the story of ministry. We're just overwhelmed, but we keep going and we keep impacting. So thank you, Father. Deacon Merrick, we know that OCF, and we heard you talk about how you're building this presence on campuses and you're able to expand. But how does OCF engage students who attend colleges that do not have OCF chapters? For example, some of the community colleges that are online, people who don't live on campus, things of that nature.
Yes, an ever-growing population, trade schools, and even students that are taking gap years, things like that. Part of really engaging young adults, college students, and youth in general, all of us, is recognizing where they're at. And as much as we'd like to be frank about it, they're on their phones. And so we spend a lot of time thinking that, or knowing that we have a means by which we can reach these young adults, these college students. And we can't replace actual physical community. It's not possible, but you can supplement it. And I'll share with you a quick story. One of the things we've done is, and it was actually started because of the pandemic, and it kind of jump-started something that I wanted to do anyway, was creating virtual small groups for college students. And over the past 2 years, we've had over 200 students participate. They run a semester long, and we've had over 200 students participate. But it would be a group of 5 or 6, and we train our facilitators to facilitate the group, not to lead a discussion or speak on a topic, but to facilitate a conversation about life and what they're going through and some of the questions they're exploring. And I'll never forget, I was at college conference this past December at St. Jacobos Retreat Center north of Chicago. And one of the students, I was watching, and it was arrival day, and one of the students came in, and there was another guy. By the way, well, yes, and he said, "You're John, you're in my small group, right?" And he's like, "Yes," and they just embraced, like, "I've been waiting to meet you, like, we've had such great," and I went up to him and I said, "Tell me about how you guys met." And he said, "Well, every week they meet with their facilitator in this small group, and they've been doing so on Zoom for, what was the fall semester, so 13 weeks. And then they had the opportunity to be together and to develop those friendships. We're also utilizing, you may or may not have heard of an online community called Discord. OCF has a server on Discord that facilitates, currently we have 400 students that are on this online community, and there's different discussion rooms. Some of them are about things very deep, like books on prayer, or books on faith, or books on theology. And some of them are more lighthearted, like one of them is on sports, and these students get in and they talk about their alma mater and football season and that sort of thing. But it's creating some community for them, and what we found is that an overwhelming large percentage of these students who are participating aren't connected to a chapter because they don't know any other Orthodox at their school, or they've only met 2 or 3, and they don't have a substantial group that meets. So thank you for asking that, but it is something that we're working to facilitate, and I see more opportunities for that in the future as more and more young people are doing online college and things like that. We have to find ways to facilitate the community for them, and then bring them together so they can actually be present with one another.
Thank you, Deacon Merrick. Nico, we heard you talk earlier about OCPM's approach to prison ministry, and we heard Johnny talk about his search for spirituality that eventually led him to OCPM and the Orthodox Church. What does OCPM do? We want to dig a little deeper now to the specifics. What does OCPM do for prisoners like Johnny while she or he is incarcerated? And does OCPMC serve Orthodox and non-Orthodox alike?
Yeah. So, Orthodox Christian Prison Ministry, we generally operate in 3 spheres, okay? So the first sphere that we operate in is if you're an Orthodox Christian who made a mistake, you committed a crime, regardless of how attached you were to the church or not, you find yourself in prison and you're put into contact with us. It happens a lot of ways. You're referred by your priest, you look us up, a family member refers you to us. When that happens, you're assigned a case manager who's on our staff. And we have an intake process that we go through, and we kind of analyze where you at as an individual. What is your connection to the church? And the case manager works to create a unique action plan for what your connection is going to be to the church and what is your spiritual growth going to be to the church while you're in prison. Part of that equation is also looking at visitation on the local level, right? If that's from a priest, is there a priest who's already active in that prison? Any number of different things that happens there. The second sphere that we operate in is very similar, but in this case, it's people who, common story. You end up in jail, and you start to wonder, what went wrong here? What is truth? Where's my purpose now? And you go on a spiritual journey. This is Johnny, who you saw the video in, right? He started to pursue truth. He dug into church history and he found the faith. And people come into contact with us through a lot of different ways. Again, right? They find one of our books. We have 28 published books. We have 12 study courses on the faith that we publish that are designed specifically for prison ministry. You find one of these books in the prison library and you write us a letter. Maybe your cellmate is Orthodox, right? Whatever it may be, it's a similar process where we have an intake. We kind of assess how serious are you. Are you just looking for some handouts? Are you trying to kill time? Are you really actively pursuing something? And again, you're assigned a case manager who's on our staff, who then begins catechism and walks people through that journey, and then ultimately even into release situations in order to reintegrate people into the church. And it really comes down to the specific person in the specific case. Part of the equation of that reintegration into a parish is even looking at the practical aspects of it. Is this a sex offender? Okay, there's certain things we need to look at there. Is this somebody who is in for embezzlement? Okay, probably shouldn't be the treasurer of your board. So let's have rules in place, and we have a lot of experience with this, right? We have a lot of experience with it. So this is one of the beauties, and this kind of gets into the third sphere of why do we have a national organization for this? Many of our priests here have been into a prison before and visited somebody. They've got some experience. Why do we have a national organization for this? Well, we joke a little bit, but it's not a joke. It's easier to get into Harvard than it is to get into a prison to volunteer. Okay, it's very difficult. The barriers of entry on this are very, very high. Okay, it's not hard to get in to commit a crime, but it's hard to get in to volunteer. Okay, well, this is one of the beauties that we have. We have these organizations here who do this as professionals. Right, this is our work. This is our business. We're here to make it, and this is this third sphere that we operate in. Is to be a resource to people on the parish level. And I'll be quite frank in saying, this ministry has been around for a while, but this is the least developed portion of our ministry. But it's something that we're actively working on. I would say that, we have, I don't know, maybe somebody could take this up with me, but I think we have the 2 most experienced prison chaplains in the United States, Orthodox prison chaplains in the United States, on our staff. We are available to our clergy, to anybody here for situational consulting. all of these different circumstances that we're talking about, we've seen them. We've seen it before. We can talk to you about how your parish should deal with a specific situation, how you should minister to somebody in a very specific situation. We're also developing a number of success models as well that people can plug into on the parish level as well. Maybe that'll come up in another question. But that's something that's future looking. That's something that we're very, very excited about. Fundamentally, it gets back to what I talked about before, is why do we take this approach? It's because it's relationship-based, Very, very quick example. There's a big, big difference. If you're somebody who is, say you're new to a church, okay? There is a big difference between seeing in the bulletin on Sunday, there's a barbecue on Saturday, everybody's invited, and somebody calling you up and saying, George, me and 3 of my friends are going to the barbecue on Saturday. You want to ride with us? Are you coming with us? We want to see you there. Those are very, very different experiences. The one makes you feel wanted. The other is a mass communication. We believe in making you feel wanted in prison ministry. So we invest in the relationship and make prisoners feel as though we are pursuing them. Right? Transfers is a big issue in prison ministry. Again, maybe some of our priests can attest to this, where you can be going in to visit somebody, and if you're in let's forget the federal system, if you're in Texas and you get transferred to a different prison, boom, now you're on the other side of the state. You're 6 hours away from that priest who is going to visit you. So that is why we have these case managers who are going to stay with you no matter where you go in the system, and plug in the resources as you go. That's the relationship aspect of it.
Thank you, Nico. Sounds like you got your hands full. To Kira, you mentioned that this is going to be the first time we have a cohort in the field this coming September. So you'll have boots on the ground. And we heard actually from the cohort. What humanitarian activities will the cohort be engaging in? I know you mentioned some of the places, but what will they be doing there? And what will a day in their lives look like?
Sure. So as I was mentioning before, for Orthodox Volunteer Corps, we are partnering with 6 different nonprofits in Pittsburgh, where our launch city is, for the next 10 months. And each Corps member, that's what we're calling them, our young adults, will actually have a specific job description at a nonprofit. So someone who, for example, is working at the homeless shelter 4 days a week, one of our young adults, will actually have a direct supervisor there who's going to teach them the ins and outs of what does it mean to help run this nonprofit. They're going to gain skills on greeting folks who are coming for services, to enter into the shelter. They're going to learn a little bit about like fundraising and development for the nonprofit. So they're going to be gaining really important professional skills. It's not just a one-day volunteer experience, but really they will be invested in by the executive director or a manager at that nonprofit to learn how to best serve that community. Because for any of you who have done volunteer work, you know that there can be a really helpful and healing way to serve, and also a harmful way to serve, where you might come in with a spirit or a posture of, I just want to help people. But really, we're trying to encourage our young adults. Not that wanting to help people is a bad thing, but it's about coming in with a spirit of humility, recognizing that we have so much to learn from these folks who we're serving. So in terms of a day in the life, so as I was saying, these young adults will be living in community together, which we know might seem kind of crazy, but it's also a part of our tradition in Orthodoxy, right? Like we, have monastic communities. We have, on college campuses, we're hoping to see a vision of communal living, and these are important life skills, right? Learning to cook together, clean together, pray together. These are adulting skills that we think are really important for our Corps members to cultivate. So a day in the life. So they're living in community together. We have found a house in Pittsburgh where they will be, each have their own room. So they'll do whatever their morning routine is. Maybe as a community, they decide they want to start together with morning prayers. They will go to their respective nonprofits where they will work. And then as part of our model, in addition to serving, we want to help them understand why do we serve and how do we serve as Orthodox Christians? What is our theology of service? What does St. Basil have to say about, hunger and homelessness and poverty? And so part of our model is in addition to serving in these communities and then living in community together with other Orthodox young adults, we have a seminar every Friday where we're going to be bringing in different speakers, and myself and my colleague Michael, who's at the exhibit hall right now, will be talking about theology and what are the theological underpinnings of what we're doing here. And then we'll be going through a leadership development curriculum, because we want these young adults to grow into into the fullness of their capacity to lead in an effective way, in a Christian way, in every sphere of life. So whether or not they decide after this year of service to go into nonprofit work, maybe they decide to go to law school or medical school, how are they doing that in a Christian way, in an Orthodox Christian way, and how are they leading effectively? So that's a big part of our model. And then undergirding the whole experience, as I'm sure might be obvious, but it's worth saying, is participating in the life of the church. So in Pittsburgh, and specifically where we're starting, which this is a national program, so our dream is to expand to multiple cities. And our 4-year strategic plan, the goal is to start in Boston in year 4, so be on the lookout for that. But we have been meeting with clergy and lay leaders in the Pittsburgh area who are so excited for these young adults to come that several of the hierarchs from the Pittsburgh area of all different jurisdictions have said, we're going to do a house blessing when these young adults move to Pittsburgh. And on September 25th, hierarchs of all different jurisdictions are coming together to bless this house and show the young adults, which they already have by affirming this agency, that we care about you. And this period of time in your life after college, where you're discerning your vocation and trying to figure out, what does the church have to do with my life? Where do I fit into all of this? We want to show them that we care, that we love them, and that they have something to offer us first and foremost as young adults, who oftentimes can be overlooked or not really know where they fit in the church community. So that's a bit of a long answer, but I feel like it's worth sharing because we're a new agency that you might not be familiar with our model. But that's a bit about Orthodox Volunteer Corps and a day in the life. And keep following us on social media. We're going to be telling the story of our core members who are starting in September.
Thank you, Kira. Christian, we heard a little bit about the origins of OYM and why you exist. And we have seen some teaser releases go out. But I think we're wondering, what is Orthodox Youth Ministry specifically going to do on a programmatic level to help our youth and young adult ministries within our parishes around the country?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because there has been a lot of kind of the teasers and all that kind of stuff that we've put out there. Like I said, first of all, that the agency itself, the OAM, was approved in October 2021, and I was hired on July 1st, and so today is my 5th day of employment with OIM, and 3 of the days have been days off, so it's a pretty cushy job. But for real, even though we are a very new agency and we're in our infancy, I really believe that OIM has the capacity to transform and revolutionize the way that we do ministry across the Orthodox Church. But right now, what we're really trying to do is to be intentional about what we're doing, the team that we're building. Because if we do this right, and I think that's really what we want. We want to do this right, and we want to do it well. It's going to take some time, and it's going to take some intentionality. So the first it could change how we, this question that we ask ourselves, why are young people leaving the church? And again, it's one that keeps us up at night, but I wonder how the emphasis would shift if, instead of asking, why are young people leaving the church, if we asked, how can we ensure that our young people have an encounter with Christ? How can we help them embody his presence in the world? And how can we empower them to engage the world in his name as his people? I mean, that would actually give this faith that we have legs. it would do something really, really powerful and transformative. And I think that we would see that this is not just a faith problem, but this is an entire church problem, that this is something that exists across jurisdictions. And I think that if we could approach it that way, it would completely transform the way that we see ministry, first of all, but also the way that we see ourselves as the family of God. You know, that we wouldn't just see that these are young people who have failed to believe, but we would see that these are children who are leaving our house and becoming homeless. And I think that that would absolutely revolutionize everything for all of us, because this is a really sacred task that we've been entrusted with. You know, the upbuilding and the raising of young people, and it's not just to keep them in the church. You know, one of the things that I do in some of the talks that I give is I ask, what is ministry for? Because I think sometimes we lose sight of what ministry is for. And here's the spoiler alert. It's to make people like God. Like, that is what this whole thing is about, is it not? Is that the end of our faith is to become like God? I mean, this is a high calling and a sacred task. And it's a beautiful, beautiful one. And it's one that I've had the joy of getting to explore with the GOA in the Youth and Young Adult Department, that what we've lovingly referred to as Y2AM. And I do believe that OYM kind of stands on the shoulders of the work that we've done at Y2AM. Most especially, there was a couple things that we've done. One was an interview podcast called We Are Orthodoxy, where I had the privilege of getting to interview over 40 young adults who are at various stages in their lives, in various walks of faith, asking them what about their relationship with the Orthodox Church. Some are still actively engaged, some have left. And it was just eye-opening to hear the different experiences that young adults have had. And from We Are Orthodoxy, we took some of those interviews and actually kind of translated them into an online course that we offer, or that Y2AM offers, called Effective Christian Ministry. And the backbone of Effective Christian Ministry was really about these 5 needs that emerged from the conversations that I had with the folks in We Are Orthodoxy. And these are the 5 needs that we were seeing were either met or not met, that led to engagement in the church or disengagement from the church. 1, young adults need to know Jesus Christ. I know that sounds really, kind of obvious, but it's pretty remarkable how often we talk about the church, and we talk about our faith, and we talk about our history, and we talk about the this and the that, but we kind of miss the forest for the trees, and we forget the guy that this is actually all about. So young adults need to know Jesus Christ. And secondly, they need to know themselves. They need to know who they are. There's so many things that they're being told about who they are, and most particularly, they need to know who they are in relationship to Jesus Christ. And part of the way they do that is by meeting this third need, by belonging to the full community of the church. We love youth groups and we love YAL and all of this stuff, and they're really good and they're really helpful tools, but if they don't facilitate a deeper and more real belonging to the body of Christ, the family of God, then what happens when they age out of Goya? What happens when they're no longer young adults? I mean, I'm technically no longer a young adult. What group am I a part of now? So we need to actually make sure that we're one body, that we're one church. 4th, young adults need to be empowered with a faith that makes a difference. And this is what I love about what OVC is doing. They're saying, no, this actually has to be incarnated in the world. This actually has to have arms and legs. We need to be the face and the feet and the hands of Jesus Christ in the world. This faith matters. And 5, they need to be equipped with the teachings of the church, but not in some heady kind of way, but as a way to guide their experience, as a way to say, is this actually God or is this not God? Am I being kind of deceived by something, or am I following the calling of the Holy Spirit as I've seen it lived out through the expression of the church, through the liturgical life of the church, through the lives of the saints? So these are the 5 needs that we're really trying to meet. And from this, OIM has built a vision that we want to equip young people to encounter Christ, to embody his church, and to engage the world in his name. So these 5 needs have developed these 3 E's that OIM is going to be about. Again, that's to encounter Christ, to embody his church, and to engage the world in his name. And everything that we're going to do, this is my promise, and otherwise I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. Is going to meet one of these 5 needs or fulfill one of these 3 E's. That's everything that we're going to seek to do, is to help young people encounter Christ, embody his church, or engage the world in his name. And anything else, while it may be a really good thing to do, just won't be the work of OYM. And part of the way that we want to do that is through offering content directly to people, whether it's videos, podcasts, whatever you can kind of find in that regard. So that's the first part of our approach. The second way is going to be through these trainings and retreats that we want to offer in person. And that's kind of a thing that we're all getting back into the swing of things, which has been wonderful. It's wonderful to see faces. It's like, oh my gosh, we're all together again. This is great. So I say we kind of capitalize on that and move full steam ahead with trainings and retreats like that. But also, I want to do online webinars and things like this that keep us in a continuing education kind of mode, because I think it's really easy for us to just kind of coast on without asking ourselves any deeper questions. And obviously, this is going to sound like a lot of big work that can't be done by just one person 5 days into a job. So down the line, what we really are hoping to do is bring in some regional facilitators and directors of this work, so that you will have access to somebody who is nearby, someone who can come to your parish, who can consult with you and help you, because that's really ultimately what we want to do at OIM, is everything to support you, walk alongside you. And I'm just grateful. I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to start this work at the GOA through Y2AM. And I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of all of you, because it's through the time that I've had in the GOA that any of this has been possible. And I am so grateful to be sitting here
Thank you, Christian.
as your son.
Thank you, and we'll be interested to follow the work of Orthodox Youth Ministries as it develops. We're going to transition to your questions now. Before we do so, I want to acknowledge someone who's in the room, Bishop Demetrios of Xanthos, who was responsible in Scoba when many of these agencies were formed, and he helped guide them to where they are today. So I just wanted to acknowledge him, and please, a round of applause. I also want to mention, I want to feature all of the agencies, but I do want to mention a few things about the Assembly, a few of our programs. We recently released an app. It's the Assembly of Bishops app. Its purpose is surveying. So the programs that you saw that we're doing in mental health, our Orthodox Christian Orthodox Christian Mental Health Professionals Directory, as well as our Peace of Mind program, they were the response of a survey. We want all of the work that we're doing as the Assembly to be a response to a need that is documented. Orthodox Youth Ministries, we heard, is a response to a need. So we have this app, and we'll be sending out short surveys, 1 to 2 question, 3 question surveys, very short ones, to understand what are the needs of the parishes, what are the needs of the clergy, of the laity, of everyone, in order to respond to those things. So please sign up. If you haven't got one of our pamphlets, you can do that. And we're also starting inter-parish associations. We have 2 pilots this year, so keep your eyes out. They're not full-blown yet, but we will have that launching hopefully next year on a much larger scale, which are all of the local churches in an area. Many of you are already doing this informally. We're trying to make very intentional pan-Orthodox associations across jurisdictional lines with laity and clergy together. We have a lot of clergy brotherhoods. We want to expand it now to the laity. So Louis, our communications officer of the Assembly, is going to bring up the microphone or pass it around. If anyone has a question, can you raise your hand? And we'll go from there. And please state your name, where you're from, and who your question is for, and please keep it to a question.
Father Michael Pallid, St. Haralambos Church, Peoria, Arizona. My question is for you. That lovely video that we started with, is it available for download for parish use?
Yes, I'll talk to all the agencies. If everyone's okay with that content being made available, we will be able to make that available on the YouTube page of the Assembly of Bishops, and we'll send it out through all of our channels as well. So we will make it available so long as I get permission from everyone.
Father Paul Paris from Portland, Oregon, Holy Trinity, for the youth OCF. For example, I wanted to know, maybe this will help other people too. So I'm currently help with some other priests. There's a number of us try to do this at Oregon State University and the University of Oregon, the Ducks and the Beavers. So we go and we do what we can with the young people there, and during the pandemic we were doing some Zoom calls and things like that and getting people together. But I'm not even sure if you know that we have a group, and if how do we make sure that you know that we're around, and if we are doing things, how do we connect to what OCF is doing? And maybe there's lots of things that you could tell us, because I don't even know that from ground zero. So maybe you can answer that question. That'd be great.
Thank you. One of the things that we've worked hard to do during the pandemic is streamline some of our processes around that, because we recognize that there could be student groups that are meeting with priests, and we don't, like you said, unless someone tells us, how would we know? And we simply, with a staff of 5, we simply don't have the capacity to be out there and knowing where everyone exists. So I would say for typically what we try to do is send out communications to all clergy, to all parishes, about providing where they know of students. If you have students going to certain schools, who are they, what is their contact information, but also in working with the Assembly of Bishops, in communicating with the bishops, finding out which clergy they know of that are on campuses, and reaching out to clergy directly in simple survey fashion to say, you know, are you engaged with college students beyond the ministry of you know, them coming to a church on Sunday, but are you spending time on campus? And we've worked to, one of the things we're working on is to really streamline that so that we can make it more efficient. Like, I'll be honest, if in your work out in Oregon, if we don't know that, I'll take ownership of that and say shame on us, and we need to know that so we can be in communication with you. Like this coming year, we're going to be providing monthly content for chapter leaders that would facilitate discussions with the student group that are sometimes it might be a podcast, or other times it's resources, and we need to make sure we're communicating with you because you've got 15 other things on your plate, and we want to make your job easier as you work with these students. So I would say that let's connect and make sure, and then we'll make sure you're getting our communications, and as well as our student list, because what we do is we pull in students that we know of in a database, and you know, we've 13 students at the University of Oregon. We want to make sure you have their names and contact information so that you can reach out to them and invite them to church and meet them on campus and that sort of thing.
Thank you, Deacon Merrick. Next question.
Hi, wow, my voice. My name's Father Paul Lundberg. I'm from the metropolis of Atlanta. It's good to see all of you, and I'm so grateful to God for all of you and your work. I've got lots of questions, which is why I had to write them down. First of all, I'm overjoyed about OVC and OIM, so glory to God for that. A couple questions for Kira first. You mentioned an age range of 21 to 29 in other service corps, and mentioned that this would be primarily, or it seems to be primarily for people after they've graduated from college. Have you considered a gap year from, you know, after high school before college? I don't want to assume that that's an option, but I'd like to hear from you for that.
Thank you. That's a great question. And we've actually gotten it from several people, because you might be realizing that more and more, especially with the pandemic, that there were a lot of high school students who were taking, you know, gap years before starting college or the workforce. So for us, so we do not have, this program is specifically designed for the 21 to 29-year-old range, and intentionally not the post-high school. It's really important to us that we get young adults in a very, you know, at a more mature place in life, given the fact that they're going to be working, you know, professionally at these nonprofits and encountering some, you know, some really difficult situations. And so just, you know, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, we were, you know, really wanting to work with young adults in this particular stage of life. But also it was really important to us because there are so few opportunities for young adults. And, you know, we've seen emerge some wonderful programming in the Orthodox Church for that between high school and college age. Like I know, you know, Project Mexico has had, you know, some programs during that period of time. I know, you know, OCF does a lot of programming in between that time. I also want to acknowledge Kenny Kidd from Focus, who I neglected to mention early on, is also part of the group that got this started. And you know, there are lots of volunteers who work at that age range at focus centers. And so, yeah, so we do not have between high school and college, specifically for young adults 21 to 29. But we certainly would be open to, as we grow and develop, doing service trips, domestically with, parishes or communities who might be interested in reaching out to us for that age range. If, we could explore that option.
Thank you, Kira. Are there other questions as well before Father Paul? I know has a lot, but I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity. If no one else has one right now,
Come
Father
up
Paul
if you
can
have
continue.
a question. Yeah, or I'll bring you the mic. Okay, another question for Kira. Or a quick question for Christian. Do you know who your Episcopal liaison is 5 days in, or no?
I believe it's Bishop Thomas.
Bishop Thomas, okay. And another question for Kira about community. I love that you're doing the living in community piece. What is your opinion about the best way to cultivate that in a way that's a little bit more inclusive? Because I admire how laser focused you are on your mission, and everyone in the house is going to be involved in a nonprofit. But I was thinking about what's the best way to organize, in your opinion, houses for Orthodox young adults in various cities where they're not all, for instance, working in nonprofits, but you have someone who's like getting into investment banking or something like that, and who is in a completely different place, professionally speaking, but has faith in common. Is that something you think is best organized on the local city level with the different parishes, or what?
That's a great question. So I can speak to what our hope is for our first cohort. Granted, we're starting in September, and so having worked in youth and young adult ministries for over 10 years now, I can say one of the most important aspects of forming a community and having young adults take ownership of their faith and in the type of community that they want to be a part of is to give them agency to decide how is our community going to coexist. And so actually, we want to respect their autonomy as young adults. And so we're not telling them when we come together for orientation in September, we're not saying, okay, your house has to, pray paraklesis every Friday night, and you have to, do Compline 3 days a week and, check these boxes. That's not at all our approach. Rather, we want to create the conditions in which they want to do that, right? Where we're giving them the space to explore, like I was talking about, what does our faith have to say about how I work in my job, and how I build a relationship with a friend, or how do I approach my priest with a difficult question. And so I think some key components of building community is putting them in the position to say, what type of community do I want to live in? Do we want to be a community and an intentional space where the fruits of the Spirit are alive and well? We are, a community of peace, of gentleness, of kindness. And even if there's conflict, even if, my roommate is not cleaning their dishes, which we know is going to happen, what is a Christian way of saying, hey, can we talk about this? Instead of maybe going about it in a passive way. So I think, giving them access to the tools that our faith has to offer and teach us about community, about reconciliation, and about everyone coming with their own gifts, everyone being part of the body, individual members of the body. But we have to work together if we're going to, build up the kingdom here on earth, if we're going to be the best that we can be, in this case, working with these communities at the nonprofits and participating in the life of the church. So agency is really important, giving them resources that they can, take advantage of, and just showing them the model of what Christ and his apostles have shown us about community. So
Thank you,
that's
Kira.
a word about that.
The next question?
The OYM. I noticed.
So your name and where you're from, Father?
Oh, I'm sorry. Father Pandele Mondalianis from St. St. Helen, Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Thank you.
I'm on the Assembly's website, and it doesn't even list OYM at all. Is that?
We're very, very sneaky agency.
Okay.
Yeah, we operate in shadow mostly.
Is there sort of a way to? I mean, is there a way to look further into it? You guys have a website?
Yeah,
or?
so we do. We have a website URL at this point. If you go to orthodoxyouthministries.org, you will see that there is a website, but it sucks. So I don't recommend doing that at this point, because we're still setting all of this stuff up. Like I said, we are in our nascency, and when we do have a website, it's going to blow your mind. So be ready.
And once they have a logo and a website, they'll be added to the Assembly's website to answer from the Assembly side.
And we'll have a video next year, too. Yeah.
Right. Next question, Father?
Hi, I'm Father Michael Sitaris from beautiful downtown Cardiff by the Sea, California. Father Ritz, you were talking about translation, and it made me think of a topic of how do we translate Orthodox ethos into other cultures. So translating a language is very important in sharing our faith in the world, especially in missions. But how do we translate the fullness of our faith in terms of music and the translation of a visual aspect like icons? Byzantine music and Byzantine art may be for some cultures a reach who have not seen or heard Byzantine music or Byzantine art. And I actually include my parish, the parishes in America in that. So I don't know how you can answer that. I don't even know if there's an answer to it, but.
I'm glad you bring up the question, Father, and I'm glad you included the United States in that. One of the most interesting principles that I heard when I was studying missiology is, and it's getting at an example of if we're being successful at what you're talking about, as we plant the church in different countries and cultures around the world. And what it said is, when you go into that church, if you kind of understand things, but you feel a little bit uncomfortable, it's a sign that you may be having success. As opposed to, I go into that church and, oh, it's in a strange language, but I understand the music 100%. I know exactly where I am in the liturgy, and everything's 100% the same as it is in my country. So if you'll look at some of our Orthodox missions, you will see that there is a variety. First, go to the ancient ones. I mean, the difference between the Slavic and the Byzantine, right? It's not the same. We had that flexibility, and we need to still have that. So I think, Father, one of the big points is we need to understand that our job is not to make people American, not to make them Greek or Serbian or Russian when we go to those countries where they are different people, but we lift up their culture. It has to be done, though, with maturity, and it can be a very difficult, sophisticated process. But I bring it back to what you ask about the United States. You know, what does American Orthodoxy look like? What does American Orthodox music sound like? Is it Byzantine, or is it something a little bit different? What other cultural patterns would there be in the church as this church is firmly planted? Part of it's happening organically. If you listen to our Byzantine, listen to the choir that sang at the cathedral on Sunday. Right? It was a beautiful choir, fantastic pieces. And those pieces weren't just the Byzantine music. There was a dimension of our American music and the way the harmonies that we have in that music. That's happening a little bit organically. But another side is to take it strategically. We want to reach this group of people. What is that culture, and how do we reach what is unchangeable and what is cultural that we can adjust? So I'm not telling you the how, but what I am accentuating is that the point is a very important point, and it's something we need to do all around the world. It's something we do in missions, something we have to do here. I'll just tell a little joke that it's not a joke, but it's a humorous story. Indian music, it's very different than American music. And I can appreciate good Indian music and the quality behind it, but the tones and the harmonies, they just don't resonate with me. And I don't have a bunch of Indian music tapes at home. That's not what I listen to when I turn to music. So when I was in Calcutta and I went into the church and I walked into the church and I heard them chanting, my first thought that I said to myself is, that's terrible. And then I thought, wow, it sounds just like the terrible music I was listening to on the streets. They're doing a good job.
Father Theodore, before you go, if you don't mind, I think there's a lady in the back of the room. Since we've been clergy dominated on the question, this is clergy laity. I want to make sure that we have everybody, and then you will also, right after, get your question. We'll ask them back to back, and then have them answered back to back. It'll be a lot easier.
Hi there. I'm Julie Dennis from San Diego, St. Spiridon, and I'm the newly, as of July 1st, the Youth Ministries Director there. So I've actually, though, have a question for the prison ministry. Could you just repeat what words like family members can say to their families who are inmates to search up or to get the resources in prison? Like what, I'm talking on the phone, hey, what should they say, number one? And then my second part of the question is, I'm hoping you can speak a little bit to e-visits and whether that's been helpful in expanding your ministry. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll wait for Father Theodore's question, and then we'll answer them both.
Father Theodore Petrudes, St. Constantine and Helen, Reading, Pennsylvania. My question is for Father Simon, Father Mark. It's very specific. I wanted to ask it because of right now we're still in summer. Kids are still who've graduated high school are still thinking of. We know they're going off to school. I went on the website and I didn't find the first 40 days program that I remember that was in place before. I walked in late. You might have already addressed something about it. Are you still doing something along lines like, or particularly for those of us that are here, what can we still do in the next couple of weeks when we go home to make certain the kids who have graduated and going off to college this fall are connected? And I just want to say it's so wonderful to have all of you up there, and you're inspiring us, and thank you.
So my memory is just so short. Anyway, in any case, with regard to family, I believe it was. First of all, in terms of family being able to connect their loved ones who are doing time, the very, very simplest thing that you can do is go on our website and get in touch with us, right? I mean, to some extent, what I've accentuated to you here today is that we attempt to handle each case uniquely because each case is unique, right? One of the greatest challenges that we have in our ministry is the diversity of the complexity of the correctional system in the United States, okay? It is a mess. There are 2,000 prisons in the United States. They all have their own rules. Each chaplain has their own rules. What mail you can send into a prison depends who is operating the mailroom when that piece of mail came through, okay? So the specifics of the situation matter. So the best thing that can be done is to get in touch with us. Our contact information for those who are in prison is on our website. Anybody who writes to us or reaches out to us at that information that's on our website, theocpm.org, theocpm.org, we will respond to uniquely, no form letters 100% of the time, okay? Sometimes I tell people we're like the tortoise, we're slow, but we always get there. We're like everybody up here, we are understaffed, okay? But we will respond to that. Likewise, we will have pastoral conversations with those who are the family members of those who are in prison. Very, very normal phone call for me to get is, my sister is in prison. What can we do? Or my son's in prison. What can we do? Normally, as you might expect, or maybe not, sometimes those conversations usually turn into the family member who's in prison is very gone from the church, not necessarily very interested in having a relationship with the church, but the ministry happens with the family member, right? They're the ones who are crying out. They're the ones who are calling out. And so, I was just having dinner with a woman last week who was expressing to me how meaningful it was for her to have a conversation with me because she felt like she could open up to me in a way that because she knows that we understand what she's going through. She could open up to us in a different way. Now, that said, even there, I made sure that we tied that conversation back into her parish priest, and that we looped her parish priest back into that, right? So that's a big part of what that, we're talking about case managers. We do the same thing with families, that we're looping in the parish priest in there, and we're going to the parish priest and saying, hey, this was this conversation, you need to be aware of this, and maybe reach out to her, and here's some thoughts for how to do that, right? And it was recently proposed to us also to have a support group for family members as well, and that's something I think that we're very interested in developing. The other question, was in terms of e-visits. Yeah, so I mean, most prisons were shut down for about 2 years. I mean, a lot of them were just in hard lockdowns. And actually, this was a really good benefit to us having remote contact with prisoners, because for a lot of prisoners, we were their only contact with anybody, like literally with anybody, to give them an affirming word for 2 years. And even with priests who were, had been going in to do visitation, they were locked out. So we were able to maintain those relationships. There are a lot of shifting dynamics in corrections right now as we are coming out of that. Gosh, I mean, I don't want to go. I could talk about this for a long time. So I want to get it maybe at the heart of what you were saying. There were some good things that happened with them starting to allow Zoom, right? We had a guy in Pennsylvania who was able to see on Zoom his mother's funeral. That would not have been possible before COVID. I mean, think about bereavement while you're in prison, right? Your mother dies while you're in prison, and there's no way for you to grieve. That's brutal. I mean, that's traumatizing. But in terms of e-visitation, yeah. I mean, there are some doors opening there. There's also a lot of doors closing, and unfortunately, with what I'm talking about, the complexity of the correctional system, we also have to go to the lowest common denominator, because we've got 1,000 open case files and we are understaffed, and so because of that, a lot of times that does mean correspondence is more effective. Now, we do leverage e-visits on occasion, but more so it's trying to hit people according to the broader communication, which in prison a lot of times is mail, coupled by visitation from somebody who's on the ground level. And mail sounds hokey to people on the outside, but in prison this is a very normal way to communicate. And we also remind people that some of the epistles were written in prison, right? So let's not discount the power of the written letter, prison letter as well.
Thank you, Nico. Sounds quite complex. Deacon Merrick, I think there was a question about the first 40 days program.
Yes, so as Father Theodore shared, you heard him say the word first 40 days, or the words first 40 days, to give you context. And this, I understand, goes back many years ago, a program started by OCF that within the first 40 days of a new academic year starting, that we would try to have contact through the local clergy, the local parish community, OCF leadership on chapter, student leaders, with the new students coming in. You heard me earlier say it's a new day for OCF and we have a new vision. 40 days isn't going to cut it anymore. Research shows that if you're not making those connections within the first 14 days of new students hitting campus, they're already forming their new habits. They're already making their new friends, getting set in their ways, and you have to be present right off the bat with them. And so Father, where did he go? Oh, Father Theodore, you have 14 days this year. But to answer your question, one of the things, I've told our staff already, we're in the process of assimilating all of our student contact information. We were actually very blessed. We had a donor give us 2 MacBook Airs, and we ran an online social media campaign. Some of you may have seen it. Sign up to be a part of the OCF community online, and they submit a form and their contact information and which school they're at. And we did a drawing and gave away the 2 MacBooks, so it really incentivized a lot of students. Unfortunately, for the next few weeks, we don't have 2 more MacBooks to do that again, but any students you know, encourage them to check out OCF through social media. They can find the links to sign up. And then what we will do, and I've told our staff, no later than the first week of August, we need to be sending all of our list, Father Paul, whoever we know that's at University of Oregon, we need to make sure we have your updated email. And by the first week of August, you should be getting the list of the students we know at your school, so that when they come back to campus, you can be in touch with them either through email or phone, or on campus is the best, finding a way to meet with them in person. But that would be the process, that we gather the information, we can sort it by school, then we send it to the people that we know are involved with the OCF chapters, the clergy, the student leaders, sometimes there's faculty advisors, things like that.
Thank you, Deacon Merrick. Is there one more question, a gentleman in the back? Nope. All right, if there's no more questions, because we are on our last 5 minutes or so, or Father Paul, I think you had one more?
One more for everyone, if you guys don't mind. Just a rapid-fire question about communication. I love the question about videos and making the videos available, because I get a million emails, and I'm not on social media anymore, and so I don't see these things that are put out. So, but I'm curious about first steps and second steps, and if at the end of your, I'm just going to encourage you to include a second step on the end of your videos, because I plan to show all of them, as many of them as I get. So thank you for the beautiful work you do, and just a request on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Father Paul. As we go through that final question, we'll add another final question. I know every agency here, including the Assembly, we need financial support, and we know everyone knows that and is always willing to help, and so thank you for that. But I think what we'd like to know also is, what can each person in this room do on a practical level right now to help your ministries, other than donations, which I'm sure we will all do? So Dean, why don't you go first, and we'll just go down the line.
Thanks, Nick. First, I just want to, like Nick did earlier, is thank His Grace, Bishop Demetrius, my first boss. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here, and a lot of us wouldn't be here. So thanks you, His Grace, for all the work you do as far as setting the tone and the ability to have the ministries that we do. I would say two things. One is engagement. Your participation here, whether it's hosting a barbecue in Austin or encouraging people to participate in the ministries that you've seen here today, or engaging locally. Engagement and encouraging engagement and more engagement, that'd be one of the biggest things I think we can do as a church and as a faith. The second thing would be the power of prayer. The world is facing lots of challenges. You see them every day in the news as far as Syria, Ethiopia. You're not seeing them as much as they used to be, but Syria, Ethiopia, Haiti, places like that, and now particularly as far as Ukraine. We need to pray for the people in these places, and we need to pray for the wisdom and the discernment of our political leaders and our church leaders. I think it's critical. So thank you for all you do.
All right, Nick, you make it really hard. We can't talk about money. So there are some easy things to do, of course. We need to spread the word. We have missionaries, communicate with our missionaries. We have events that we need people to do. Right now there's a Trek for Missions that's going on. You can invite missionaries to come and speak at your churches. We can volunteer to be missionaries. But I think there's one thing I want to highlight that's a little bit more strategic than that and more powerful, and it connects to something that's going on right now. I've served these last couple of Pascas at a mission parish. And a lot of times when I've served at mission parishes over the years, the question has been getting a priest. And usually it's just getting the parish organized in order to have a priest and get the finances together, and you can bring a priest. But right now, what I heard is in one of the metropolises, there's 8 empty churches. In another one, I think it was 14 churches that don't have clergy right now. And we're in a situation where people are not coming in order to lead the faith forward. We're in a world where 70% is not Christian. 1 billion people have not heard the gospel. The 30% that are Christian, many of that 30% are nominal. We are a small percentage of the world. How are we going to change that? And I have one thing that I'd like to suggest, and it's for here as much as it is for the foreign mission. You know, in the foreign mission field, we're strategizing on how to keep spreading the faith. And there's so many opportunities and so many people that are hungry and thirsty, and all we have to do is go to them, and they'll come. Here it's another world, another situation where we're losing, we're not gaining ground. What do? I want to ask, in how many of our churches do we have a small group, a think tank, a committee that is focused on how do we grow our church? How do we bring the gospel to more people? How do we engage more people in our Christian faith? You know, we need to pray. How many times do we sit together with a group of people and pray, Lord, help us as the community in Bakersfield or Fresno or Sacramento or Atlanta, wherever we are, show us how to reach people around us, and then think with our minds that God gave us and come up with ideas. The Lord blesses that. If we would have that a part of the strategic focus that we are doing, there will be activity. And that's what I want to encourage, is that we will do that, and with that focus, we'll have here and around the world, because the two are together. And the world needs what we have. So I urge you to consider, all of us, getting some groups together in your churches to think about how to spread the gospel. Then finally, the last thing, I know we're out of time, but I've got to throw it in. This is just fantastic what's going on here. There's something unique in Orthodoxy compared to the other faith traditions here in the United States. In our Orthodox world, we have all our jurisdictions. But we're an Orthodox church. And when we come together, we're stronger. We bring our resources, we bring our talent together. We're much stronger than we are by ourselves. And all of these groups here, we represent ministries that usually in any one faith is all done under the national church. But we don't have one national church. We have many. And so our structure is that we're all scattered across the jurisdictions, but we need support. I just read a statistic that the average Christian is giving a little less than 2% of their income to support all Christian ministry. I know for missions, they say 0.1% of the income of Christians goes to missions. All of these agencies need to raise their funds from the faithful. It doesn't come from the national churches. So I'm not going to say what the next part. You can figure what that is.
Thank you, Father.
And that way I'm obedient to you. But it is wonderful that everybody's together and we have powerful ministry united under the assembly.
Thank you, Father. We're at 12 o'clock, so for the four of you, just one thing they can do very quickly, just rapid fire.
What you can do for college students, give them a sense of belonging. Feed them, invite them to your homes, have meals for them at church, invite them to sing in your choir, teach Sunday school, give them a sense of belonging. And I'll just stop there.
Thanks.
In our ministry, as I started saying, awareness is a very, very big issue. Letting people know that this is what our church does. This is what our church is about. If you have shame around these issues, whether it's a prison or any other issue, but it's, in our case in prison ministry, come to the church with that. July 31st is approved by the Assembly of Bishops as Prison Ministry Awareness Sunday. We have an awesome implementation package for this. Please participate in this year. One was mailed to your church. Maybe it fell through the cracks. Maybe you didn't get it. We have a bulletin insert in there. We have homily ideas for your priest. Everything that he would need to do do a great Awareness Sunday on July 31st. It's the top thing on our website right now, theocpm.org. We have a great digital version of it as well. Go on there, download it. Come see me in the exhibit hall. I'll give you one if you haven't seen it, and promote this. And because our people need to know about it, and they also need to know that it's not just about doing the work, it's also doing it with excellence.
Thank you, Nico.
Nominate a young adult to apply to OVC. So we finished our first year of recruitment with over double the number of applicants that we can accept. And that was thanks to nominations from various clergy and youth workers and and laity. And so our national recruitment for our second cohort is going to begin in September. But if you go to our website, orthodoxvolunteercorps.org, there's a nomination form. When you nominate a young adult ages 21 to 29, we will personally reach out to them and invite them to apply to the program, get to know their interests. So all you have to do is put their name and email address in this form. We will do the rest. Invest in your young adults. If you see a young adult at your parish who maybe might be on the fence about things, but you can tell they care about some of these various social issues we've been talking about, nominate them. Get them to be involved and invest in their lives. Thanks.
Christian?
First of all, I'll just say keep an eye open for the stuff that we're going to start putting out. I think we'll really be hitting your view in really September. So keep an eye open for that and share everything that you see or that you like. But in terms of actually engaging in this ministry yourself, I think we are now at a time when the church's work of relational reconciliation is more important than ever. Our world is splitting at the seams, and young adults are reeling. So if you know any youth or young adults in your life that are isolated, lost, call them right now, and don't delay on that, and get together with them and make sure that they have some sort of lifeline to you as Christ's emissaries on earth.
Thank you, Christian. Just to mention, you can come to the exhibit hall. We're next to the giant mosaic down the center aisle. All the agencies are tabling together, so come talk to us, learn more. I want to thank all of you for coming. And as they say in the airline industry, you have a lot of choices, so thank you for choosing us.